Are incense sticks toxic? I was originally going to leave this subject well alone, at least until I saw somebody ask what flavour incense is the most relaxing for a newborn baby. A remark that clearly triggered the civic responsibility centre of my brain, as this is clearly less common knowledge than I first assumed. So let's unpack whether or not incense sticks are toxic. Dangerous chemicals, respiratory risks, air quality, allergic reactions, and carcinogenic risks. Firstly, incense sticks very much release harmful chemicals when burned. And yes, this includes the natural ones, which I only say because some people try and sidestep all the studies on this by casually inserting the word natural. There is seemingly this absurd maxim that somehow has slipped itself unlubricated into the common consciousness that if something is natural, it's therefore safe. Now, I'm very happy to make a video on all the natural elements that will straight up kill you, but I am fairly sure a quick scan through your common sense will slip a comfy pillow underneath this pseudo-alternative sales pitch. People have been saying something very similar about smoking weed for decades. Oh, it's natural, innit? As if that somehow excuses the literal inhalation of plant matter directly into the lungs. Incense smoke very much contains a mixing bowl of particulate matter, gases, and a ruthless panoply of volatile organic compounds. Notice that I say organic compounds as well. Notice that they're organic, but they're still bad for you. Imagine that. Maybe the word organic is another word that gets shoehorned into marketing in order to help you make bad decisions. These chemicals, organic or otherwise, are going to include polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, benzene, and even formaldehyde. And yes, that was a shortened list because I struggled to pronounce everything else. But rest assured, whether I can pronounce it or not, every single thing on that list is something that's very bad for you. There is no grey area here. We know for a fact that these chemicals are toxic and have a slew of health implications. In fact, studies have shown repeatedly that incense smoke contains many of the same carcinogenic compounds that are found in cigarettes. Because of the aforementioned medley of malign members, inhaling incense smoke can obviously lead to respiratory problems. The inevitable fine particulate matter produced by burning incense can penetrate deep inside the lungs, causing inflammation and exacerbating existing conditions such as asthma, bronchitis, and various other chronic respiratory disorders. Long-term exposure to these particulates can lead to decreased lung function and respiratory infections. And vulnerable populations, including children, as well as the elderly, and individuals with pre-existing respiratory conditions are at a particularly high risk and should not be exposed to this for prolonged periods of time, and definitely not in confined spaces with poor ventilation. Remember that burning incense significantly degrades indoor air quality. When incense is burned indoors, the concentration of pollutants can become extremely high, particularly in poor ventilated spaces, as I mentioned earlier. So if you are going to use them, at least have the common sense to crack a window. This leads to the accumulation of harmful substances otherwise, and people will breathe this in, potentially causing immediate health effects such as headaches, dizziness, and irritation of the eyes, nose, and throat. However, long-term exposure in these kinds of environments can contribute to developing conditions that are more serious. These might include things like cardiovascular and respiratory diseases, none of which are conditions characterized by the sense of calm or peace that incense is generally supposed to induce. In fact, many of the companies that manufacture the packaging say, quite literally, and I quote, to purify the air, which in actual fact is the literal opposite of what they do. It's probably important to note that a great deal of people are actually extremely sensitive to fragrances and chemicals released by burning incense. In fact, some people are straight up allergic to them. Common symptoms of this are going to include the fairly obvious ones like sneezing, runny nose, itchy or watery eyes, and irritated skin or rashes. But for individuals with things like asthma, which for the purposes of this chapter we are going to pretend is an allergy, exposure to incense smoke can literally trigger an asthma attack, much of which is brought on by the scented oils and synthetic additives that are literally found in huge numbers of these sticks. Please remember that the bulk of these are manufactured in parts of the world that play very fast and loose with quality control. In fact, certain countries have had serious conversations in the halls of government about actually banning them. Now let's finish off by having a brief discussion about how carcinogenic these are, because this isn't spoken about anywhere near as often as it should be, but there is a significant carcinogenic risk associated with incense smoke. In fact, the International Agency or Research on Cancer classifies incense smoke as a human carcinogen. It's a group 2B if you want to look it up. In fact, studies have shown repeatedly that there is an association between frequent incense use and an increased risk of upper respiratory tract cancers, including nasal, throat and lung. The carcinogens present in incense, such as benzene, for example, are known to damage the DNA and promote the development of cancerous cells. So if you like incense, by all means use it, but in moderation and in an environment that is conducive to you not slowly killing yourself. Or just don't use it at all. And definitely don't buy it for your newborn baby. That's ridiculous.